Hi everyone, I'm Gary Null. Today, a very interesting program because we're going to give you some very good news about COVID virus. At least news that is accurate, scientifically based, and not meant to create hysteria. I'm also going to open up our lines for you to call in and give me your opinion. And the question is this: do you believe, or do you have any reason to believe that the mainstream media is complicit with special interest groups, such as Big Pharma, for example, or the World Health Organization, in keeping the public from knowing the truth? This is not a pandemic. It is not killing everyone. In fact, the figures you're going to hear today from multiple sources, outstanding scientists who don't have any investment in this financially, say that this is not even as bad as a normal flu season. In fact, I'm going to give you a report that the summer flu kills 500% more people than the COVID. Why isn't this being talked about? I'd like to hear your response to this. But first, I've got several video clips, short ones, I'm going to play with you, including Bruce Lipton, and then Ben Swan, on their perspective on this. And Ben Swan in particular is reporting on how Sweden got it right. But remember, the media in America tried to make Sweden out to be wrong. But they were wrong. And do you know that there's only been one death this month in Sweden from COVID virus? One. So they got it right. What did they do? We'll follow that up today. Also, I'm going to share a little commentary with you, but we always begin with the latest on health and nutrition. This is from Oregon State University, and it simply says this: multiple vitamins and mineral supplement is linked to a less severe and shorter lasting illness symptom. Older adults who took a daily multiple vitamin and mineral supplement with zinc and high amounts of vitamin C in a 12-week study experienced sickness for shorter periods of time and with far less severe symptoms than counterparts in a control group receiving a placebo. This was published in the peer-reviewed journal Nutrients. So imagine those people who now know that the immune indicators, including white blood cells' ability to kill incoming pathogens, were very important, because you want to do all you can to build up your immune system. But vitamin C and zinc are the two superstars in all this. So the people in this study had less sickness, less symptoms. So imagine if you're just an average person taking an average multiple vitamin. Now, what if you started to be more specific and look for those nutrients that are known to knock out pathogens, like quercetin? It's just one example. So this is important that you all know that those of you taking supplements, you've been doing the right thing all along. And these people are only taking 1,000 milligrams of vitamin C a day. I don't even start people at 1,000 milligrams. I don't find that functionally useful. But if they want to see what can really do, up that to 5,000 milligrams, 1,000 5 times a day in a buffered form, meaning take it in a protein shake. You make your protein shake in the morning and just take maybe 2 or 3 ounces throughout the day. You put your coenzyme Q10 in there and take your multiple vitamin, put it in there. It'll do you a lot of good. I remember speaking with the Nearing, Scott and Helen Nearing. They were a remarkable couple. When they visited me at the Fertile Earth Farm back in the early 1970s, they wanted to see, they had heard that I had taken off all modern equipment and I was only using tools to build and repair an old farm that had been there since the 1700s. So if a window broke, how would you have fixed a window in the 1700s? If you needed to, put in fencing, how did you do it? So I had all this old farm equipment that I collected at auctions around the state. And so we had a wonderful conversation about that because they lived close to nature. And people would visit them from all over the world. And one of the things she emphasized, she said, "Oh, I see you have a beehive." I said, "Yes, I have several beehives." She said, "You know that honey is one of the best things in the world to take every day. And if you take it in an herbal tea," and she wasn't referring to green tea at that time, but herbal tea, whatever, I don't even know what herbal she was talking about. And she said, "We do that and we just never get a cold. It's the best thing in the world if you give it to someone who has any kind of upper respiratory cold." And I said, "Well, my mom, if we started to come down with anything, she'd put, I don't know if any of you remember this, Vicks salve on your chest at night, and you could feel it and you could smell it. And it was greasy, but it worked." In any case, she says, "We give them honey, raw honey." They were just wonderful. I visited with them several times. This is the latest. This is from Oxford University, published in the current British Medical Journal, Evidence-Based Medicine. Quote, "A trio of researchers at Oxford University has found that honey is better treatment for upper respiratory tract infections than traditional remedies." And by the way, traditional remedies means antibiotics and medications. How about that? The leaders of this study described the study based upon the results of multiple clinical trials that involved testing of treatments for upper respiratory tract infections and what they learned from the data. So here's what they learned. Over many years, they found that the medical community has grown alarmed as bacteria have developed resistance to antibacterial agents like antibiotics. And some studies have found that overprescribing of these antibiotics is hastening the pace of your body becoming resistant, meaning when you need an antibiotic, and by the way, antibiotics have been one of the most important medicines ever discovered by Alexander Fleming, but you can't overuse them. You can't use them for, just a cold or flu because those are viral based. They're worthless, but not just worthless. Antibiotics destroy all the good bacteria in your system, therefore change the dynamic that you need of your gut microbiome, meaning the good bacteria proliferate, the good bacteria are killed, the bad bacteria proliferate. So, they found that the antibiotics do not help with viruses and not all different types of bacteria, but honey does. Honey can be used to treat colds in general and coughs in particular, and people have been using honey, raw honey, for thousands of years. And so that's what they looked at. 14 different clinical trials involving 1,761 patients, and the data was strong. Honey proved to be the best therapy among all of those tested at helping with coughs, 36% better at reducing the amount of coughing, 44% better at reducing coughing severity, and also reducing the duration of infection by 2 whole days. That's very important. Why? Well, the researchers note that the reason honey works as a treatment for these upper respiratory tract infections is because it contains hydrogen peroxide. And that's a big known bacterial killer. I do not recommend people drink hydrogen peroxide. But also for topical, you bet. You absolutely use it. If your cat scratches you, you don't want to get an infection, and you can. So you put hydrogen peroxide on it, but then put colloidal silver on that, and then put raw honey after that. Makes a difference, especially for cuts and scrapes. But honey's also the right consistency. Its thickness works to coat the mouth and the throat, and it soothes the irritation. For example, when I've done a lot of lecturing and a lot of counseling, sometimes hours. Last night, I counseled one person for 3 hours by telephone. And, my voice was a little stressed, so I just took a teaspoon of Manuka honey, 20 power, and a little warm tea, and you mix it in, drink it slowly, and it coats the throat, and you're fine. From the University of Bristol, which is in the United Kingdom, high-intensity physical activity in early life, as a kid, leads to stronger bones in adulthood. Well, that's good to know, since we're a nation that suffers from an awful lot of osteoporosis, or thinning of the bones. But remember, peak bone mass occurs in young adults and is considered to be a marker of the risk of fracture and osteoporosis later in life. Hip fractures make up a large proportion of the osteoporosis disease burden. So the more a child exercises, the more vigorous the exercise, the stronger the bones. But it is even more important that older people exercise too, especially power walking, where every time your foot hits the ground, you're forcing the remineralization of your bones. In fact, in our anti-aging health study group, there was a 95 and 94-year-old persons, and she was told by her doctor, don't join this. You have severe osteoporosis. You have very thinning bones. Nothing can reverse it. Well, in 2 months on campus, she reversed it. Not only did she reverse it, but she could barely walk, and then she walked 3 or 4 miles fast, and then she had strength, and when we did the impedance, her mineralization had increased by 50%. That was a big deal. So all it takes is for one person to show that something can be done for everyone to benefit. It's interesting when they say, well, you have to have more people, more studies, more people, more studies. No, all I have to have is one person in a controlled environment to change something that you said couldn't be changed to prove it. Bannister was the only person in the world who broke a 4-minute mile, meaning his body ran faster than 4 minutes, 3:58 something. They said it was impossible, but shortly after he did it, a lot of other people did it faster than him because they didn't believe it was possible, because they believed the experts. Lindbergh flew across the Atlantic. All right, do you remember the second person to do it? No. So we have to understand that it only takes one person to change a paradigm, but other people to appreciate now they can contribute to that too. Where I grew up, everybody believed that you had to have meat 3 times a day. It was very common to have bacon and eggs, but if you were kind of on the upper end of the working middle class, you would have sausage once a week. I thought it all stunk. I didn't eat it, but everyone in my family did. I don't think, if you ate, rat meat where I came from, oh, that's good. Put some mustard on it. And I really think if you Googled anyone in West Virginia ever eat anything healthy in their life, it would come up with a question mark. No one I knew ever did. Oh, you had to have milk, and then, you walk around drooping over with a snot and mucus coming out of every orifice in your body. But no one ever made the connection. Not that they weren't smart and good people. They were. It's just that whatever authorities told them, they believed. And so vegetables were kind of secondary, and fruits were, almost always in some sugar-sweetened can, because there wasn't a whole lot available except in the summertime. And then after they ate and eat everything on your plate, people were starving in China. Well, you want to send my uneaten food to China? I'm sure you heard that too, right? So then everybody would go in and collapse on a couch as if they were in a deep food-induced coma. My dad would lay on that couch. In fact, he made a permanent indentation in the couch. So even when he wasn't there, it collapsed because he had to sop up all the gravy. And I once watched my mom making gravy. I got a chair, and I got up on the chair, and I looked at her, and she just smiled, and she said, well, I'm going to make some gravy. And she took some white flour and put it in a bowl, and then she took something red in a powder, and she put it in, and then she put some water in there, and she stirred it around, put salt and pepper in it. And I said, what's that? She said, oh, that's blood. Blood? You're making gravy out of blood? Yeah, that's how you make gravy. Out of blood. Whoa! You know, so now some of you may realize that being very curious about food, but seeing how it was made, that turned me off. In fact, turned me off so much that when we went out one Sunday to the McConnell's farm, which we spent a lot of time out there in the summertime, they were going to eat a lamb that day, and so I went out and took the lamb and hid it in another pasture, another farm. Oh, I got beat for that. I didn't care. You know, my mother later said, "Good for you for taking up for the lamb," and but then they didn't stop eating meat. Do you imagine what would happen if every child in America had to go to a slaughterhouse and see where their pork chops, hamburgers, and hot dogs came from? Now, of course, we wouldn't allow that today, which is unfortunate because that's too real. But, you know, we have to understand the reality of everything we do. It comes from someplace. In any case, in this situation, when you're eating the right foods, which are rich in magnesium, not dairy, and you're exercising, you're then creating new cells, new stem cells. And those new stem cells are prolific when you're eating greens. Like if you have spirulina or chlorella or seaweed or green juices, you're creating more immature stem cells. And that's what keeps you younger and healthier longer. Also, talking about magnesium, the University of Granada, which is in Spain, found that when you take a good amount of magnesium, I'm saying 800 milligrams a day, it improves vitamin D status, especially in older women. Because menopause is a stage of hormonal imbalance in women. In addition to other physiopathological consequences, it can pose a risk of deficiency, and boy, you don't want to be deficient either vitamin D or magnesium. Vitamin D is important for your immune system and your bones, but magnesium is important for your heart, keeping a regular heart rhythm. You would be surprised at how many people have AFib, and in 3 months of being on one of my protocols, oh wow, it's not there. But their doctors just don't get it, but they're not reading the literature either. It works. L-carnitine, magnesium, and certain herbs. And also from the University of Otago, which is New Zealand, high fructose diet, which is your normal diet in pregnancy, impacts the metabolism of your offspring. So the more of this fructose you take in while you're pregnant, you're going to cause significant changes in the maternal metabolic function and milk composition and alter the metabolism of your offspring, and that can lead them to be more susceptible to diabetes and heart disease. This was published in the Frontiers in Endocrinology journal. And sleep makes relearning faster and longer lasting. University of Lyon in France, published in Psychological Science, simply stated, getting some sleep in between study sessions can make it easier to recall what you studied and relearn what you've forgotten, even after 6 months. Okay? So sleep is important. Taking little naps is important too. That'll help you with your memory. And finally, from Lauriston University of Medical Science in Iran, a meta-analysis, meaning many studies and are looking for common outcomes, adds evidence to chromium. Yeah, chromium. You don't need a lot of chromium to help with glucose control. So if you're a diabetic or pre-diabetic, make sure you're getting your 2 milligrams of chromium each day into your diet. And also, if you're eating mangoes, good for you. A mango a day helps keep aging away. There's a nutrient in mango. It's called magniferin, M-A-N-G-I-F-E-R-N, I-N. And it's a polyphenol, and it's found in mango, and it possesses very, very powerful antioxidants and anti-inflammatory properties. So anytime I counsel someone who has any inflammation, let's say arthritis or fibromyalgia, I ask them to take a mango and puree it along with some other polyphenols and the omega-3 fatty acids in particular, and that will help them. By the way, most stone fruit, meaning if you open up the fruit, there's something that looks like a big hard seed inside, that also helps as well. Peaches are very, very good for you. That's the latest on health and healing. I'm Gary Null. We are 20 minutes into our program. We're going to take a break, and when we come back from the break, we're going directly to Ben Swan, who's a very respected, and he's a classy guy. He does his homework. He doesn't take sides. He looks for the evidence. This is a short clip, but one that we need to know about, because the mainstream media is not only showing this truth, but they're attacking it as well. Back in a moment. Please stay with us.
Strategy worked, but so far, if you look at what we call trending or trends when it comes to the coronavirus, Sweden seems to be doing better than just about every other place in the world, especially the United States. So we're going to talk about exactly what those numbers look like. Before we do, though, a quick shout out to our sponsor for this episode, Create Tailwind, createtailwind.com. Create Tailwind is a way of learning the process of banking yourself, the way that Fortune 500 companies do, the way that high net worth individuals do. Bob Burnett and Jim Oliver will teach you the concept of infinite banking. It's an Austrian economics idea based on banking yourself as opposed to using banks in a traditional way. It's a fascinating concept. If you want to learn more about it right now, in the link in the description below, you're going to find a link to our 25-minute interview where Jim and Bob explain in detail how infinite banking works. And to learn more, check out their website, createtailwind.com. All right, so talking about what's happening in Sweden right now, it is really a remarkable story because that country, even though it was mocked by the rest of the world, even though Sweden has come under a lot of criticism from countries like the WHO and other countries in Europe and even people here in the United States, Sweden has remained steadfast in a couple of factors. Number one, Sweden decided against economic lockdowns when the rest of the world was shutting down businesses. Sweden has also resisted the wearing of face masks. They have not mandated face masks for their population. So we talked about Sweden taking these steps of having no lockdown a few weeks ago, and yet media constantly criticized the country, saying that they were essentially putting people in harm's way and threatening the lives of people. And yet the numbers now show that Sweden's strategy may be paying off in a very big way. In fact, the numbers behind cases and deaths in Sweden has fallen dramatically, not a little bit, dramatically, every single month since the spring. Take a look at these numbers. The deaths attributed to COVID-19 went from about a 50% reduction to falling off of a cliff. In April, there were 2,572 deaths attributed to COVID. In May, that number dropped to 1,646. In June, it dropped again to 805 deaths. In July, Sweden reported just 226 deaths. And now in August, Sweden has registered just one death with or from the coronavirus. Yes, you read that correctly, just one death so far. And the story is the same in the hospitals. COVID-19 is hardly registering as a blip on the radar. Sweden has reported just four new COVID-19 patients in their ICUs in August. The month of July saw only 52 COVID-19 patients in ICUs. Again, these numbers are absolutely remarkable, but what's really remarkable about them is that when Sweden first imposed the strategy of saying no economic lockdowns and we're not going to require face masks, they were mocked around the world by institutions like the WHO and by health experts around the world saying that they were making a huge mistake. Here we are just months later, and Sweden has done the exact opposite of what other countries are seeing. We are getting in the United States reports of a constant rise in coronavirus cases and a surge in coronavirus deaths, which as a result of those numbers, if you believe them, and I think there's a lot of questions about those numbers, if you believe them, indicates that the US is trending in the wrong direction. Too many cases, too many people getting it, and that's calling for politicians to insist on more lockdowns, more shutdowns of the economy, not returning kids to school in the fall, and actually mandating face masks for everyone in the country. And yet Sweden went in the exact opposite direction. In fact, they never mandated face masks. So how does Sweden compare to other nations in Europe who have also dealt with high numbers of coronavirus? Because early on in this pandemic, Sweden did have high death rates, but of course those numbers have dropped off. But let's compare them to other nations. As of Sunday, the latest death rate in Sweden, deaths per 100,000 people, was reported to be 56.40. The figure is lower than that reported in the UK, Spain, and Italy, according to the latest report Sunday by Johns Hopkins University. Sweden's latest case fatality ratio, portion of deaths compared to total cases, was reported to be 7.1%. There is more than half the percentage reported in the UK at 15.1%, half of that of Italy and Belgium, each reporting 14.2%, and nearly half that of France, 13.4%. And it should be mentioned that that is according to Newsweek. That is certainly no fan of this idea of not imposing lockdowns. But what is so important about these numbers is not just that Sweden is outperforming other nations in terms of death rate now, and in terms of not seeing a second wave. But there is a bigger issue here too, which is that of Sweden not falling into the trap of destroying their own economy as a result of these terrible, misguided measures. In fact, what we're finding is Sweden's economy is doing better than just about every neighboring nation in Northern Europe. Sweden's GDP fell 8.6% in Q2 2020, the country's worst quarterly decline in modern history. The fall came amid the novel coronavirus panic, which Sweden did not implement full lockdown measures over. However, the Scandinavian nation markedly outperformed the rest of Europe. Its GDP drop in the second quarter was lower than the 12.1% average experienced in the Eurozone, as well as the 11.9% average across the whole EU. Sweden outperformed several European countries, including Spain, France, Italy, and Germany. And based on its numbers, Sweden, unlike other countries in Europe and the United States, is not in a recession. They have not had 2 quarters of GDP decline, which is required in order to be officially in a recession. Look, the point of this story is very simple. Sweden has acted in a way that bucks the trend of the rest of the world and has acted in a way that recognizes that the coronavirus is not more severe than many other viruses in history. They did not institute draconian measures. They have not instituted face mask mandatory laws. They have not butchered and destroyed their economy. And they have not set up their population to say, you will all be trapped until a vaccine comes that we can force on you. Sweden has acted as an exception to the rule. And as a result of that, what we are seeing is very simple. Sweden outperforming the rest of the world economically, as a result of the coronavirus, medically, and in terms of fatalities. And that is something worth paying attention to. Those who are in authority here in the US should give heed to what Sweden has done. They have acted in a cool, calm, and collected manner, and as a result, their people are doing much better than people all around the world, including right here in the US.
Okay, now where else in the media have you heard that? Nowhere. The New York Times and other publications and broadcasters have attacked Sweden, and yet they were right, we were wrong. And by the way, talking about being wrong, both the Republican and Democratic conventions are just wrong on every level. First, it all promotes a duopoly, a two-party system that is controlled by special interest groups. Pay enough money, then you have access to power. You have access to power, you then put forth your ideas of what the world should be like, what laws should be passed, what restrictions should be eliminated. And people say, well, it's the best of two evils. Select the one. If you don't like Trump, select Biden. I'll be going into an in-depth discussion of Biden's background, what he's actually done, which would mean that he would not be qualified to do anything. And Kamala Harris, even worse. In fact, I have Marjorie Cohn coming on Friday this week, who has written an outstanding article about Kamala Harris's background. But when I said to my friend, you are aware we have a third party, it's called the Green Party. And now, how many of you know the Green Party candidate's name? His name is Howard or Howie Hawkins. He's a 67-year-old American trade unionist, an environmental activist from New York City, a retired Teamster and construction worker. He was one of the original co-founders of the Green Party of the United States. He's an eco-socialist version of the Green New Deal, which he first proposed in 2010, but he's been active in anti-war and anti-nuclear and pro-worker movements since the 1960s. So that's important. His vice president running mate is Angela Nicole Walker. She's 46. She's African-American labor organizer, a bus driver, and she was the vice president nominee for the Socialist Party in 2016. But what do they stand for? Why should you look at not having to put your vote for the lesser of two evils or abstain altogether? The Green Party is a party of social and environmental justice, which supports a radical transformation of society for the benefit of everyone and for the planet as a whole. Now, we understand that the threats to economic and social and environmental well-being are not being addressed by either of the other two parties, nor have they. In fact, it was rather disingenuous. There was Michelle Obama, extremely articulate, making her point. But one of the points she made was, about locking children up in cages without a single pause. It was her husband, Barack Obama, who built those cages and shipped millions out of the country and prided himself that we will not allow any illegal aliens into this country. We have the clip. In fact, Jesse, if you can find the clip of Barack Obama, Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, Nancy Pelosi, and Chuck Schumer, all saying the same thing. Everything is duplicitous. Everything is its opposite. This is Orwellian, as if nobody remembers what you said yesterday so you can say today the opposite. And it's, okay. Well, it's not okay. The Green Party has been consistent in being the champion of all political groups in America to save the environment. It does not discriminate. They respect all life. And let's face it, all of us on this earth depend upon the diversity of the natural world for our existence. And I don't believe, and I know the Green Party doesn't believe, that all species are expendable. But look at President Trump's two sons out there killing innocent, harmless animals for trophies. My, what kind of demented ego do you have to have in order to kill an innocent animal to show your masculinity? The Earth's physical resources are finite, so we threaten all of our futures by using them to excess and to depletion. Every person in this and future generations should be entitled to basic material security as of a right. So the things they believe in is a healthy society, but based on voluntary cooperation between empowered individuals in a proper society, free from discrimination, whether based upon race, color, gender, sexual orientation, religion, social origins. None of that is allowed. Treat people with respect. Work together to build a better planet. And they're nonviolent, by the way. All their solutions are nonviolent. That aligns with me. I mean, if any of you have ever seen me in the last 12 months, I've had 7 demonstrations I've led. Thousands of you have participated down Union Square and down in the West Village and out on the Upper West Side. We demonstrate all over, and I'm a passionate speaker when I'm out there, but never violent, never attacking an individual, but rather showing the problems with the existing paradigm and then offering positive solutions. So why aren't we talking about inviting their spokespersons into debates and at least knowing that they exist? So for those of you who, like my friend, who thought you had to vote for Joe Biden because you can't stand Trump, okay, I understand that. Well, now you have an option. Remember, Howard Hawkins, his whole life has been spent as a trade unionist, environmental activist, anti-war activist, anti-nuclear activist, pro-worker. So, something to consider, all right? What you do is up to you, but at least I want you to know that these are dog and pony shows, these conventions. They shouldn't be taken seriously. All right? It's that simple. Anyhow, now we're going to play a clip from Bruce Lipton about the coronavirus, and I think it'll give you a perspective. Now to Bruce Lipton.
We live in fear of the person who coughed right next to you, or the person down the street who doesn't look that well. Oh my God, I got to stay away from them. Every year, about 0.1% of the population will die from every flu that comes up every year. It's not different than flu, it's just a bad flu. It's dangerous except for this. It can be treated. The coronavirus is a flu virus. And they want to say, it's not the flu. And I go, look, a flu has a range of symptomology. You've experienced that range yourself. Some flus, you don't even know you had the flu. The immune system takes it and runs with it so fast that it eliminates the symptoms even before they manifest. So you may have had flus in the past, didn't even know you had it because the active immune system would eliminate it. First of all, let's understand something. What is a flu and what is cold season all about? There are a number of different viruses, rhinoviruses and coronaviruses, that annually show up every year and bring us all the symptoms of a flu or a cold. The viruses that affect the respiratory system, where the air is coming in and going out, air is coming in and going out, are viruses that actually replicate at temperatures below body temperature. When a virus of this cold nature infects a cell, it doesn't replicate at 98.6 or 37 degrees. That's too warm. So basically, if the temperature drops a couple of degrees, then the virus kicks in. So the virus doesn't operate at body temperature, it operates at a colder than body temperature. That's why flu season is associated with winter. The average person is going to have flu symptoms that range from, I didn't even know I had the coronavirus, to respiratory distress. That is a threatening problem. And respiratory distress means that the symptomology has pushed the system, and the respiratory influence of those viruses down your respiratory tract from your throat all the way down in your lungs is open for infection by this virus. It could get worse. It's dangerous except for this. It can be treated. So having respiratory distress is not the end problem. If you can get treatment, it'll go away. It's a bad flu. Coronavirus is a bad flu. The largest portion of the population is not going to die, even though the news media threat is, they didn't come on and say, flu season, it's going to be aggressive this year, take care of yourself. No, they come on and say, aggressive flu is going to kill up to millions of people. And it's like, jeez. As soon as I hear that, it's like, okay, it's not every regular year now. It's like, I could die, millions of people, that includes me. And the fear is becoming a problem. But in some countries, they started testing everybody. But guess what they found? About 50% of the population that was tested had previously been exposed to this virus, but have no symptoms. In other words, there's a massive number of people, 50% of the population that was tested had already been exposed to the virus, and they had no symptoms. It means a very important fact, that their immune system is working so good that even though they were exposed to the virus, that virus was not able to overtake the system because of the strength of their immune system. The bigger problem you have is the fear of the virus. In a fear response, the biology of the body changes to put energy into escaping the fear. That proverbial fear is the saber-toothed tiger that chases us. When the consciousness of protection is required, then the biology will adapt to a protection response. It shuts down the growth and maintenance of the body. It shuts down the immune system. Stress shuts down the immune system to conserve energy. We're all going to manage the coronavirus. Yes, you could get a respiratory problem and it could be distressing, but guess what? It's not that it can't be treated. It can be treated.
Okay, bring it down. It sure can be treated, and I'm going to give you some good news on that in a moment. But one of the things I would like to see the media and the Democratic Party or the Republican Party deal with is the environment. Nothing is being done. Zero. Here's what happened just this week that the media didn't cover. In Africa, in Kenya, they have a gigantic lake that lake grew 35 to 40 feet. Now, I'm not aware of any lake in the world in a short period of time that rose because of torrential, excessive rain and flooded out all the villages, schools, everything. Also, this is also just this week, there was a 10 million acres destroyed right in the United States, out in Arkansas, and through 2 states, because they had winds of over 100 miles an hour. It leveled all the crops, not a word. Yet that's just the new norm. Heat waves are unimaginable. In Death Valley this week, 130 degrees, the highest temperature ever recorded on Earth, and since humans have kept records. And that's the new norm. Yesterday, a heat wave in California is fueling more than 30 different wildfires, could leave millions of homes without power. Just 10 hours ago, California declared a state of emergency as it fights fires and extreme weather. The warming of Greenland yesterday, the ice sheet, it passed the point of no return, meaning now it's accelerating. Remember I kept telling you we're in chaos theory? No one wanted to acknowledge it. Oh, we have 100 years. We don't have 5 years. We don't have 5 years. Substantial parts of the planet will not be able to support human life or animal life, plant life within 5 years. Mass migration, at least 1 billion people who have no place to go, no money to get there, will be caught in this. And Greenland is causing the waters to rise. So goodbye, Florida on the east and west coast. The last decade was the Earth's hottest on record as climate crisis accelerated. The number of Siberian forest fires increased 500% in a week, with the highest recorded temperature in the Arctic ever. We're talking about just 2 weeks ago. Even the South Pole is warming quickly, and scientists say it's not going to stop. Canada's last fully intact Arctic ice sheet collapsed. Fires in Brazil's over 500 fires are accelerating. The ocean's plastic could triple. That's how much junk we have in the oceans right now. We have fading winters, hotter summers, make the Northeast America's fastest warming region. That's going to kill off hundreds of millions of trees in Pennsylvania, Virginia, New York, Vermont, Maine, New Hampshire, otherwise good states to live in. Not now, because when that heat comes and you don't have water, you're going to have excessive drought, which is going to dry the trees, kill the trees, and the beetles take over from there and decimate everything. And that makes you susceptible to fire, huge fires. Now that's just, we're talking about what has happened in the last few weeks or days. Nothing at all. Why should you pay attention to this? Because you've got to have people in offices at the state and federal level who have their pulse on this and or can take the pulse of the environment and act accordingly. The only people able to do that I see are the Green Party, because they're not fakes, they're not phonies, they're real. But no media coverage whatsoever. Now, a few other things that I think are important, and that is, this is from London today. More than 500 scientists from 61 countries have again measured the annual planetary temperature. The diagnosis is not good. And then it goes on to talk about how the temperature around this whole world is heating up to a degree I would not move, consider, or live in Australia. It's dead. And because they haven't cared about their water supply, they can do all the desalination in the world. That also creates global warming and massive pollution, but it's not going to work. So Africa, much of Europe, Asia, the Caribbean, and now North America are going to be the hottest places imaginable. In fact, this year, some of those set records, including Alaska. And the Arctic as a whole was warmer than in any year in the last 4 years, and that's the new extreme. So all these are extremes. By the way, I just read an article this morning from The Spectator by Ross Clark. Summer flu is now more deadly than COVID. Quote, we are, of course, in the middle of a deadly pandemic of a novel infectious disease. It's just that it's not, at present, killing remotely as many people in England and Wales as that boring old disease which no one seems even to worry about ever, the flu, summer flu. Winter flu, yes, sometimes we worry about that overwhelming the National Health Services, we take the precaution of vaccination, the elderly and the other vulnerable groups, but the summer flu, it hardly registers. Yet few seem to have noticed. While we fret about weather, reopening schools, bars, and so on, it'll cause a second wave of COVID virus. The flu is killing 500% more people in England and Wales. And then it goes in the Office of National Statistics. Not a word in the American media, because they don't want us conflating flu deaths or cold deaths with corona, and yet they have no statistics on their side. And by the way, the so-called Bill Gates green revolution in Africa, a massive failure. According to the ecologist and Stacey Malkin, its, quote, green revolution is locking African farmers into a system that is not designed for their benefit, but for northern multinational corporations. Billions of dollars spent promoting the subsidizing of commercial seeds, genetically engineered seeds, and agrochemicals across Africa have failed to fulfill their promises to alleviate hunger and lift small-scale farmers out of poverty. That's according to a new white paper report from Tufts University Global Development and Environmental Institute. So once again, will the media go after Bill Gates and all the other multinationals and the hedge funds for taking away the land of people in Africa and using it for genetically engineered food? Not at all. And also today, I want to share some information about about what's happening with COVID pushback from mainstream scientists and also from mainstream medical doctors. And this is the medical assessment of COVID. America desperately needs a second opinion from Jeff Harris. And it goes into the fact that we're not asking for a second opinion about how to treat or diagnose COVID. And yet they talked about the Mayo Clinic published a study 3 years ago with the headline, 3 Reasons Why Getting a Second Opinion is Worth It. And it showed that major clinics, the Mayo Clinic, the Cleveland Clinic, and Johns Hopkins University all said the same thing, that there was huge, huge discrepancies found when you got a second opinion, and therefore could have saved yourself the wrong medications or the wrong medical practice or malpractice. So let us not just accept what the government says, because they also have an agenda. And also, just to give you some specifics, this from The Guardian, extreme weather just devastated 10 million acres in the Midwest. I mentioned this to you, and it said that that massive 50-mile wide, 770 miles long in Nebraska and Indiana, and it said it's called a derecho, and it had winds, huge winds that no one had ever seen before. And it just tore up all of the crops in its way, causing billions of dollars. Not a word. All right? Not a word. So we're not getting the facts. And, well, I see the time here, and I'm not going to have time to do the positive COVID information, including an open letter to Anthony Fauci by 3 physicians who are all saying that everything you've been saying about COVID is wrong. And I look carefully at it, and I believe that he is right. So, and by the way, we have posted our petition to walk away from Wikipedia by telling you the truth about what Wikipedia really stands for, how they use bias and attacks, terrible vitriol against everyone within the alternative and complementary movement. They have done nothing that I can find that helps the human condition or saves lives. So for the hundreds of thousands of people who are doing good work, whether it's chiropractors or homeopaths or holistic nurses or dentists, they do nothing, yet they attack them as if they're lunatic charlatans. That's what Jimmy Wells, the founder, said about that. Go to prn.fm, read our petition. If you agree with it, sign it, because we're sending it out all over the place to them, and that's important. Finally, news that was inevitable but always too soon. As of tomorrow at 11 o'clock at night, I'll be closing the Uptown Whole Foods store, in part because of the COVID virus. The Upper West Side has seen our customers over 50% gone, And I've kept the store alive for several reasons. One, because it's been a sanctuary on the Upper West Side. We feed, and I don't like to mention this, but it's one of the reasons I kept the store there, is we feed about 50 to 70 people a day for free for decades. And we do it very discreetly, and it's sad to see some people come in that were once regular customers, and now they're broke, and they're embarrassed. And I said, don't be embarrassed. You know, we all go through ups and downs in life, and we're here to help you. And to all of the people who've worked there for decades, but, you know, I couldn't afford the rent, and which was not brought down to what I could afford. But more importantly, most importantly, is the COVID virus just decimated the people. Everyone's gone elsewhere. I understand. And so I just look at it as appreciation for having been able to succeed for so long and being an integral part of a neighborhood. And it was sad, very sad. But we're doing all that we can to find our employees work, and in other jobs. We've been calling everywhere to get people jobs, and we're succeeding with a lot of that. And so tomorrow will be our last day. We're offering some, great opportunities, and anyone who wants good equipment, call our number. And because if you have a store, a restaurant, or a business, and you can use coolers and refrigerators, I'm giving them for free. All right. And then on Friday, we have homeless shelters coming, and we're giving them tens of thousands of dollars in free food and supplies. So everything will be used in an appropriate manner. We tried to, I even offered to give the store for $1 to the employees, but unfortunately, that was not something they wanted to do because they just on their own couldn't handle it. But we made the offer. Now there are a couple contracts that have been signed to take over the store by qualified people who could make it succeed, but it's in the hands of the landlord. My hope is that doing the right thing today, because it's the final day, they will be able to have a yes from the landlord. And if that's the case, I'll be the happiest person, and to turn it over to them so it stays open. But right now, it's a Hail Mary. Now, you can say it never works. Well, remember Rodgers, for the quarterback for the Green Bay Packers a couple of years ago in a championship game, threw a long pass. And he had 4 receivers in the end zone, and one of them got it, and they won the game. It can happen. It's a long shot, but I'm a big believer in, doing all that is possible, because I just don't give up, not on people. Sad. Thank you all for listening. And if you're not aware of it, the store's at 89th and Broadway, and we will stay open a little longer tomorrow. We want to service as many people as possible, and at least nothing will go to waste. And if you need some equipment and you can handle it and take it out, call this number, 646-926-5422. Ask for Glenn, because he's coordinating everything. And if we can help you, give you some equipment, be happy to do so. Have a nice day, everyone.